All right. I apologize in advance, but this is going to be a little bit longer of a video because we're going to have to go through kind of an in-depth rubric and look at a pretty rigorous assignment. So what you're going to do is you're going to write a narrative. Narrative is another word that means story, showing how a particular small moment during this experience affected one person. So one moment during the trip that you're on, an imagined moment, because it's an imagined trip, affected one person. Here's your choice for your narrative. You could be a traveler witnessing something significant during your visit to your destination. You could be a resident of the destination, someone who lives there, meeting a traveler to the destination. You could be a resident of the destination influenced by something having to do with the destination, like something about where they live. If you have another idea, just come talk to me. I'm pretty open to ideas. Your writing must be influenced by the text you've read so far. Pay close attention to the requirements of the rubric and the explanation tutorial that I'm going through right now. Now, I'm going to assume you've already clicked this link, scrolled to the bottom, found the thing that said narrative, and read it closely. I would read it 2 to 3 times to do a really close read of it. And then what I'm going to do right now is go through the rubric and go through to what extent I think I met the criteria of the rubric when I wrote this example. So if we look at the point of view has to do with who's telling the story, like who the narrator is. So point of view, for 4 points to be exemplary, your writing establishes a clear point of view. It's very clear who's telling the story. If there are changes in the point of view, if they are present, they enhance the user experience of the text. They make it better, like if it switches from person to person, or switches from who's telling the story. Proficient means there's a clear point of view in the text. It's just very easy to understand who's telling the story. We're not going to worry about these 2 categories here. If you see these 2 categories, it's because you got them marked in your feedback. You can look at them, but what you want to shoot for are these 2. The characters. The characters in the text are interesting and intriguing. That's pretty subjective. I understand, interesting and intriguing. But the idea is to make them somewhat believable. 3, the characters in the text are believable. Sensory details. Sensory details in the text are well placed and make the text come alive to the reader without being overwhelming. A proficient example would be that sensory details are present in the text and give the reader an enhanced understanding of the text, but maybe they are a little overwhelming at times, or not necessarily as well placed as they could be. Clarity. The writing is incredibly clear and purposeful. Gives a 4 point. 3, the writing is usually clear. Conclusion. The writing concludes effectively, even if there's not a resolution. The story doesn't need to have like a happy ending or riding off in the sunset, but it does need to seem like there's an end to the story. Emerging. The writing concludes somewhat effectively. And then at the end, you need to annotate your text. The text you write needs to be annotated to show at least 5 places in your narrative that were influenced by the informative sources you read about in your destination. So I'm going to begin at the bottom and I'm going to work my way back. So the annotations, if you look at my example, I did these annotations here, and what I'm doing is referencing the sources where I got the information that ended up in my story. In terms of a conclusion, I think this conclusion works. I'm not saying this is the greatest conclusion to the greatest story ever told, because it's not true at all. But I do think that this conclusion does wrap the story up. If I look at the clarity, I think my writing is clear and purposeful. I think the vocabulary might be somewhat challenging if you're not using Google to look things up, but being someone who knows the words that I'm using in the story, this is, I think, clear writing. Except I need to move my comma. And I also think my punctuation and my grammar is on point, and that's part of clarity, is having good punctuation and solid grammar. I think sensory details, in terms of sensory details, I think I really tried to use sensory details that were effective without being overwhelming. It's not great to just simply rattle on with sensory details for no purpose. So I think I was exemplary in sensory details. Characters is where I think I came up a little short. I'm writing a story, and honestly, I'm writing a an imagined story about me, my wife, and my daughter, I don't think I made us very interesting. I think I made us pretty pedestrian. I think it's believable, but I don't think that we're incredibly interesting or unique in this story at all. So I would give myself a 3 on this one. That they're believable, but I don't think I'm super interesting or intriguing in the story. The point of view, I think I would give myself a 4 in this one, because I tried to use point of view and switches in the point of view. I started with a narrator, just talking about what was happening. It's actually an omniscient narrator, a narrator that can read people's thoughts, just talking about what's happening. And in these italicized parts, I switched to different points of view from the different travelers. So in this one, this was my point of view. This one, this would be my daughter's point of view. And in this one was my wife's point of view. And so what I try to do is narrate from their point of view and my point of view, and then also switch back and forth between having some just like narrator tell the story and then going into a first-person narration of kind of doing that. And I did that so that you could get kind of an objective point of view, kind of like looking at it from above, and then look through the eyes of the people that are experiencing it, and then go back to looking at it just kind of from above, and then back through the eyes. So I do think I did that intentionally, and I think it was reasonably effective. So when you go to write your story, write, and then obviously revise. Go back, read out loud, revise, look at the rubric. It's a process. Don't wait until the last minute to do this. Get started.